In 2006, two of pop's biggest names were dominating the charts, minding their own business, but not for so long. One sly lyric lit the fuse on a feud that would wreak havoc, albeit a very colorful, fun version of havoc. These stars were Nelly Furtado and Fergie. At first glance, they actually had a lot in common rather than reasons to beef. Both dominated the mid-2000s charts with a similar fusion of pop, R&B, and hip-hop, and both became huge stars around the same time. Nelly Furtado went from being the I'm Like a Bird bohemian chick in 2000 to a flirtatious pop princess in 2006 when she dropped her mega hit album Loose. Fergie, meanwhile, transitioned from the Black Eyed Peas' charismatic frontwoman to a solo superstar in 2006 with her debut album The Duchess. Two women, two blockbuster albums, one moment in pop history. So of course fans and the media couldn't resist drawing comparisons, and at times looking for a rivalry. By 2006 to 2007, the pop landscape was intensely competitive. The late 90s and early 2000s teen pop era had faded, and a new wave of female pop stars stepped up to fill the void. Nelly and Fergie were at the forefront of that wave, alongside the likes of Beyonce and Gwen Stefani, ruling radio and MTV. Both Loose and The Duchess delivered multiple smash hits. Nelly's Promiscuous and Say It Right, and Fergie's London Bridge and Glamorous were all over the airwaves, each song reinforcing their newly minted images. Nelly was now the adventurous genre blender with a hip-hop edge, thanks in part to Timbaland's production. And Fergie was the bold pop rap diva, proving she could hold her own outside of her group. With such parallel success, it felt almost inevitable that people would pit them against each other. It's a classic music industry formula, especially when two women are succeeding simultaneously in the same lane. Initially, any notion of a feud between Nelly Furtado and Fergie seemed like pure fan speculation. There was no public bad blood, they weren't trash-talking each other on TV or anything like that. But pop feuds have a way of brewing quietly through the music itself, often via coded lyrics that listeners love to dissect. In this case, it all started with one word: promiscuous. Nelly Furtado's Promiscuous featuring Timbaland was the song of summer 2006. Its playful, provocative vibe marked Nelly's big reinvention, and the track was unavoidable on the charts. A few months later, Fergie's catchy single Fergalicious dropped, and one particular lyric made ears perk up: I ain't promiscuous. Given the timing, that word jumped out. Was Fergie slyly contrasting herself with Nelly's hit song persona? It might have been just a coincidental rhyme. It pairs with suspicious and fictitious in the verse, but many pop fans took it as a subtle shot. The implication would be that Fergie was saying, unlike that other girl singing about being promiscuous, I'm not like that. Whether or not Fergie intended any shade, the media and fan chatter started to buzz about a possible rivalry. The seed was planted. The music clapbacks began, but if Fergalicious planted the seed, Nelly Furtado's next move poured on the fertilizer. In early 2007, Timbaland released Give It To Me, a track featuring Nelly and Justin Timberlake. The gimmick of this song was that each artist used their verse to flex and throw a little diss towards someone else. Justin directed his verse at Prince, responding to Prince's quip about sexy back, and Timbaland reportedly took shots at producer Scott Storch. Nelly, meanwhile, came out swinging in what many interpreted as a direct response to Fergie. Without naming names, she sang, "Seen you try to switch it up, but girl you ain't got to," and even referenced her own hit with, "You love my abs in the video called Promiscuous." She capped it off with a confident taunt, "I'm the Wonder Woman, let me go get my ropes." In essence, Nelly's verse said, "I see you trying to copy my style, but you're not on my level." To anyone paying attention, it was clear who that girl was. Nelly appeared to be answering Fergie's I ain't promiscuous line, basically telling Fergie, "Nice try with the diss, but I'm still the one killing it over here." It's easy not to do a double take when hearing this song, especially when thinking of Nelly's earlier work. Did the girl who once sang I'm Like a Bird really just clap back at Fergie? It's such a startling and exciting change of pace, showing that Nelly wasn't afraid to get competitive. For pop music, this was a surprisingly bold confrontation. Pop stars usually keep things polite in public, so hearing Nelly Furtado seemingly roast another singer on a hit record was a thrill. Give It To Me essentially became a pop diss track, something you'd expect more from rappers than pop singers dominating the top 40. Fans ate it up, reading between the lines and reveling in the drama. When asked about it though, Nelly tried to pump the brakes. In a radio interview, she laughed out the idea that her verse was aimed at Fergie, insisting that she and Timbaland were just having some fun, bragging about themselves. It was the kind of denial you'd expect. Plausible, but not convincing to the hardcore fans. The lyrics seemed just a bit too pointed to be a coincidence. I'd even call it a forgotten piece of pop culture lore. Not many pop divas had ever used a hit song to call it appear like that, and it paid off. Give It To Me even shot to #1 on the charts, meaning a track full of sly disses was suddenly on every pop radio station. Fergie, for her part, didn't let it end there. Later in 2007, she appeared on the remix of Daddy Yankee's song Impacto, and used her verse to answer back with attitude. Fergie rapped, "I ain't promiscuous, the realest chick up in this. You got a problem, come and say it to my face. Fergie Ferg make an impact, I'ma pull your wig back." She basically doubled down on declaring herself not being promiscuous once again. There's that word again, and threw a challenge by saying the ladies know the real from the fake. Telling an unnamed rival to say it to her face and threatening to pull her wig back was about as confrontational as pop lyrics get. Even to this day, it's a vivid way of saying I'll expose you, and it even cheekily suggests the other woman is putting on a fake front by wearing a wig. In other words, Fergie answered Nelly's subliminal shots with some not so subliminal shots of her own. Hearing Fergie threaten to pull someone's wig back is kind of hilarious. Pop bees hardly ever get that explicit. That line is very funny but rarely ever talked about. By this point, the pop feud was in full swing, at least in the eyes of the public. Media outlets picked up on the exchange and ran headlines about Fergie and Nelly's war of words. TMZ famously highlighted Fergie's wig thread and the back and forth lyrics, effectively confirming that a beef was on. Still, it's worth noting that this war never went beyond these musical jabs. If you weren't paying attention to the lyrics, you might not have even realized two of the biggest pop stars of the year were seemingly dissing each other from afar. It all stayed on wax, which in a way kept it fun. On music forums and blogs, it was basically Lose versus the Duchess, and everyone had an opinion on who came out on top. Looking back now, the Nelly Furtado vs Fergie feud feels almost quaint in its mildness and brevity. It was essentially a brief lyrical sparring match that added a bit of spice to the pop charts. This was also happening in an era when the media loved to stir up rivalries between female artists. Just as Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera had been pitted against each other a few years prior, and the pop rock girls like Avril Lavigne and Ashley Simpson were compared, Nelly and Fergie became another storyline of which one is on top. The truth behind the scenes was likely less far dramatic. Nelly and Fergie didn't seem to have a personal vendetta. It was more that each wanted to stake their claim as the reigning pop queen with a hip-hop twist. The feud was largely fueled by the buzz around those song lyrics. In later years, both artists essentially shrugged the whole thing off. Nelly Furtado eventually admitted that she regretted putting that negative energy out there. She has suggested that the perceived feud was blown out of proportion by others, and she made it clear that she and Fergie reconciled and have been cool with each other for a long time now. There's even photo evidence of them greeting each other warmly at events post-beef, and any lingering tension is long gone. In interviews, Fergie hasn't harped on the issue either, and both seem to regard it as just a quirky little chapter in their careers. And it's certainly a quirky chapter in pop history.